In this Kontakt video tutorial, which is part of a month-long series, I'll walk you through creating a progressive house with sound sample from Massive. In this third part, we'll look at slicing and resampling the Reese Bass and Dark Bass sounds from Massive. Don't forget to check out www.massivesynth.com for tutorials and sounds for Massive. And never miss a tutorial by subscribing to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ADSR So Johnny over at www.massivesynth.com created some Reese and Dark Bass sounds with native instruments Massive. In this month-long series, we'll create a progressive house track by sampling, resampling, affecting, and filtering those sounds until they sound like something else. In part 2, we resampled one of these sounds, and in this part, we'll slice and resample another sound. So first, we'll find a sample and add it to the mapping editor. Turn that down just a little bit. So I'm going to go with this bass sound. I'm going to open up the mapping editor and I am going to put this on C0 so I don't have to change the octaves on my MIDI keyboard. I'm moving a root node and I am going to put it on one key. So now, so now it's on one key. Now I'm going to double click on this zone to open it in the wave editor. And if you remember from the first part, when we dumped this from Massive, we sampled a whole octave of bass sounds. So what I'm going to do with this specific sound is I am going to slice it and lay it across the keyboard so that I can play it as if this is a real synth. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to turn the grid on. And then if you're in fixed mode, you want to go to auto mode. And you want to adjust the sensitivity. Yours won't start off as nice as mine. Adjust the sensitivity until you get to a point where all your slices are proper. And you may need to manually add and remove markers. And you also may need to lock markers. So I'll show you, just as an example how to do that. To lock a marker, just hit the lock icon and click on the marker to lock it. A locked marker will be gray. To delete a marker, just click on the minus sign and click on the marker that you want. It'll go away. And to add a marker, go where you would like to place the marker and click. And also, when you use these tools on the side, don't forget to turn them off when you're done. Otherwise, when you go to manipulate your wave, your sample, you may inadvertently remove markers that you want. And so this is fine. This is sample. This is sliced properly for me. So the next thing that you want to do is go to the Sync Slice tab and just click on the Drag MIDI to Host button. Now what this will do is this will slice this sample based on the markers that you see, and it'll move all of them into their own group. So if you open up if you open up the group editor and close the mapping editor, you can see this actually happen. So voila. So now we have our slices mapped, and Kontakt will put them on the last key, which is C-2, but so that we don't have to keep moving the octaves on our keyboard, let's move this over to a more usable octave such as C1. So, oops, not what I want to do. And don't forget, if you ever do anything wrong and you want to undo it, just use the undo buttons here. So just drag this over to C1. Bingo. I change the octave back on my keyboard. Oops, went too far. Okay, so now I have it on my keyboard. So now I can close the group editor, close the mapping editor. So what I'm going to do to this specific sound is I'm not going to play with the start and the end positions or add a loop for this specific one. What I will do will be solely with effects. Okay, so the first thing that I am going to do is add a 3x2 versatile filter. This is one of my favorite filters because it can do quite a lot, but I will warn you that this specific filter is a little CPU intensive, so if you're working on an older machine, you might want to just use a standard filter or one of the legacy ladder filters. You'll have to use multiple to get this similar type of a sound though. So what we want to do is we want to set the first cutoff to about 80. About 80. Set the resonance to about 88. We want this to really resonate. Alright, and set the type to 0.9. Probably easier to just type it in. And set the amount to about a little under 50%. Okay, and already you can start to hear the change. Alright, now let's set the second one. And what this shift does is this is the amount that the next cutoff should be shifted by. So if this is 80, whatever we set this to, this filter will be shifted that that amount away from it. So in this case, we'll do 54. About 54. So instead of the beauty of doing it this way is that if you want to modulate the cutoff, you only need to modulate one of them, and the other filters will follow because they're the offset that they get offset from the original cutoff. And then set the resonance to about 54 as well. Set the type to 0.2. And the amount to about 78. All right. Now for the last one, let's set it to, let's offset this one by about 37 or so. All right, and set the resonance for this one to 90, about 90. And set the type to 1.0. And set the amount to about 90. All right, and we need to add some gain to this to offset our changes. So let's add about 19 or so. That's not what I wanted to do. All right, so let's add a little bit of distortion. And we're fine with the tube version of the distortion. Now set the drive to 100 and leave the dampening to 0. And let's increase our output by about 11 dBs. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Real gritty and grimy bass. Okay, now let's add a legacy ladder filter. made the cutoff about 1.2 or so. And the resonance 72. Actually, I have the wrong filter here. I want a legacy ladder, not a... I love how if you switch, it actually keeps your settings. If you switch between the same filter, if you switch between the different filter types, it'll maintain your cutoff and resonance. So 1.2 or so should work for this. And the resonance of 72 is fine. Now let's add a stereo enhancer. It's actually called Stereo Modeler in the effects list. And we're fine with pseudo stereo being the option. We don't want to enable that now. What that will do is that will create a stereo signal from a mono source. Since we sampled this from Logic, our sample is actually stereo, so we don't need to fake it. So let's add the spread. Let's make it 100. Leave the pan at dead center, and let's bring it down just a notch, so about -4 or so. Alright, next we want to add a phaser, the good old-fashioned classic phaser. Alright, so we want to leave the depth at 50. The speed at 0.60 is fine. Phases at 45 is fine. Feedback, we want to increase the feedback to about 75% or so. We want a lot of feedback on this. And the dry and wet is fine. Right now it's at 0. The default is fine. That's perfect. And finally, we will add an EQ3. Alright, so for the first frequency, we want to do about 220 hertz. So just bring that down just a little bit. The bandwidth, we'll raise that a little bit. We want to make a wide shape. So we'll put that at 2 or so. And we want to add just a little bit of gain here. So we'll do about 3. That little bump right there. The next frequency is fine at 1.4 for the mid-range. We want to increase the bandwidth to about 2.0. We want a subtle fall off here, not a sharp one. So that's why we want to increase the bandwidth a little bit. So about 2.3. And then here we want to just remove a little bit from the mid-range from this, so we're going to take it down about 3 decibels. And for the last frequency, we're fine at 7.5. We don't need to go any higher than that. And here the bandwidth is fine, and we want to take this down actually a little more than a little bit, to about 8 decibels. We don't need any highs in our bass sound. Alright, I like that, and we can definitely use that. So that will be our base for our progressive house track. And so now we have a synth lead, and we have a bass. So in our final episode, we will put all of these sounds together and actually put together a track with the drums and effects, lifters, and all of that, and make a progressive house track. So the recent dark bass sounds for Massive sound amazing as is. but over this month-long series, we'll sample and resample them until they sound like something else. And don't forget to check out our website at www.kontakttutorials.com for more Kontakt tutorials and sounds. ADSR Kontakt tutorials. Supercharge your Kontakt skills. This is DJ Nyce signing off until next time. Now go make some music.